You're listening to The Dating Den with dating and relationship badass and best-selling author Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important dating, sex, and relationship issues you want to know about. So if you're ready for true talk that's authentic and unfiltered, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
The Dating Den, episode 11. How I'm sabotaging my first dates and how to stop. Hey ladies, welcome back to the Dating Den. And as you know, I love when I get to work with my people. And so today we are going to meet Sam. She is a lawyer and she works to protect human rights, which is amazing. And her last serious relationship was 3 years ago, and she is dating a lot, but, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, she's not so interested or attracted to the guys that are interested in her. And she thinks there's something preventing her from really attracting the type of guy that she wants. Of course, she, like you, wants to find a quality guy, and her special sort of request to the universe is a guy who's passionate about what he's doing, and she hopes that her soulmate is also got a passion for doing things for good causes to change the world. So with that, I want to welcome Sam to the Dating Den. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. How are you, Marni?
I am good. I'm really excited to sort of get to the bottom of what's keeping you stuck. So why don't you just give our listeners, like the Tumblr version of what's your relationship story?
Sure. So I have been dating since I think I was around 17. And I've had about 2 serious relationships since then. But a lot of the time I have spent single or just dating around. And I'm hoping to really change that and have a breakthrough and attract my soulmate.
And why did your other 2 relationships end? Was there like a theme, or were they just not the right guys, or what happened?
So the last serious relationship ended because he was emotionally unavailable. And I think I struggled also with communicating my needs as well. And so we both went back and forth a lot. But ultimately, I made the decision that this was just unhealthy for me because it just was very unequal. It was me giving a lot, but not receiving what I wanted or needed from him in return. And so I just created this unhealthy dynamic that I wanted to break free from ultimately.
And was that a pattern also in your other relationship where you were kind of like doing most of the giving?
Yes, that was actually the same pattern.
Okay.
Yes.
So interesting. Have you realized that up until now? Did you sort of see the commonality in that?
Yes, absolutely. It was pretty clear.
Okay, cool. And then what about, I'm just curious because I, want to kind of get to know you in a broader sense also. What about with your, your friendships or family relationships? Do you feel like those are mostly even, or you seem to also be the giver in those kind of relationships too?
So until recently, I have been the giver in most of those relationships. I have a lot of friends. I am close to my family as well. But in the past, I've had very close friendships where I have been giving a lot more in terms of just listening to issues, etc. But then inevitably it would kind of backfire on me. And then the friendship would end as well. So I think I have realized that I have an issue with making boundaries and also just with giving too much and also making sure that my needs are also being met in relationships.
Okay. So, and let me ask you this. Where do you think you learned that pattern? Like, did you see your mom doing that or your mom not doing that? Or where do you think you learned it?
So I definitely learned it from my mother. So my parents had an arranged marriage. My dad is an extremely dominating man, and I could see my mom is a very loving, kind of soft, caring person. And I think just throughout her life, she gave a lot, and I think always felt taken for granted. And then when she voiced her needs, nothing would really change. So I think she was frustrated with that. So I definitely believe I kind of learned that pattern unconsciously from her, maybe.
Okay. And were you closer with your mom or your dad, or sort of the same?
My mother, definitely my mother.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when she was in those situations when you were a kid, did you ever feel like you were kind of the mediator, or you were like actively supporting her in her frustration, and being her ally?
Yeah, I was definitely supporting her. I mean, to be honest, she pretty much confided in me as to how unhappy she was in the marriage throughout my formative years and even into like my early adulthood. And I tried to block that out from creating resentment to my father, because I definitely love my father a lot. But yeah, she felt like she didn't confide in anybody else, and I just felt like I was her only ally, I guess.
And did your dad, was he like verbal about his frustration, or what the role of women are? Because clearly it was a culture that didn't really match your values and where you're living. I assume this all happened here in America, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
great.
It did.
So
Yes.
so was your dad like verbal about that kind of stuff, or was it just all kind of silently communicated about what the expectation is for women?
Well, so it's very interesting. I think he's actually very much a feminist. And so for me, growing up, he always supported me in my career goals and pushed me to be the best person possible and to live up to my potential. But I think, with my mother, because he came from such a traditional background, they both fell into gender roles. Like she was a housewife, he was the breadwinner. And, I also think that in his life, I mean, he was abandoned when he was 8 years old, et cetera. So I think he just kind of had some issues really just getting close to people and building that up and being emotionally available.
Ah, interesting. Okay. So can I make an observation?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, it's like, why are we talking about this? This has nothing to do with dating. Obviously it does. So in my experience, there's obviously a connection between sort of who we're attracted to and what our relationship story is and our past. And so there's kind of an interesting thing going on here. So most of us, when we're growing up, it's very typical to kind of fall into a role or have one parent that we are sort of like allied with. And what's interesting is, to me, that you were totally connected with your mom and supporting her and being her confidant. But also at the same time, your dad is emotionally unavailable. And he wants you to be this, certain successful American woman, right? Not really falling into that kind of traditional trap. And so what I see is that in some ways, you get to identify or be, and I'm going to use like the good girl or get approval, love from your father by attracting men who are unavailable, right? So you get to get mom's love because you're supporting her, but you're also kind of identifying, validating that relationship by being attracted to men that are unavailable, like your dad was. It sounds like to me. Does that resonate at all?
Yes, that definitely resonates.
Okay. So so when I tell you that, what comes up for you?
I mean, I definitely agree with you. And I think, for me, I'm just trying to figure out a way to kind of break that pattern, or at least take a different approach where I'm not continuously repeating the past.
Yeah.
I think I look for love in men that I did not really receive from my father. Because I definitely got his approval and I know he loves me, but in terms of our connection, I mean, we don't talk a lot. There's just not much of a connection there.
So, and I love that you brought that up, because whenever I talk to my clients about, the stuff with their parents, sometimes it's really hard, because, when you say, I wish I would have had this, or, people go like, oh, I'm letting them down, or it's not that I'm not appreciative or grateful or don't love them. And I know that when I was going through my own journey, like, I had a bunch of stuff going with my dad, and I remember sitting in a room kind of talking about it, and I was like, but my dad is awesome, but my dad is awesome. They're like, this isn't about it. Because here's the thing, and I want everyone to hear this. If your parents plopped you in the middle of the living room and they said, okay, we're not going to do anything else except give you all the love and attention that you want, you would still have residual fallout from that, because there is no such thing as perfect parenting, right? So before we even go further, I totally want to give you permission to kind of dive into this stuff and know that it totally has nothing to do with how much you love your dad and your dad loves you, and also with your mom.
Great, thank you. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, because, and to this day, my dad's like, he's like, wow, I didn't really realize that when I traveled all the time for work or whatever, that would whatever. And I'm like, I'm good. It's all, you did the best you could. It's all good.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do I break that pattern? Well, the first thing is, I want you to think about when your mom was in that relationship with this guy that's emotionally unavailable. There's always like an unconscious gain. Same, right? Same when you're dating these guys that are emotionally unavailable. If you were kind of being creative about it, can you think of like, what's the safety in that for you?
I think the safety is first of all, it's playing it safe, right? Like you don't, and also I think there's a fear in being able to receive love. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's much easier to just stay in that giver role, that, almost rescuer role, where you're just trying to help this person. And then you get the validation from that. But at the same time, you're not really receiving the love that you want, that you really want. But at the same time, you're scared of it.
Well, yeah. And the other thing is, when you get in that role, then you start to believe that if I'm not doing stuff, then then I'm not lovable. Like I'm not worthy.
Yes, completely. I think it totally ties in with not feeling worthy of love, which I do think is one of my issues as well.
Yeah, because it sounds like it was a lot of work to try and get attention from your dad that you wanted, that you needed.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I remember this one time when I was much younger, and I was crying, and I complained to my mom. I was like, he never spends time with me. And she told him, and he just kind of scoffed and laughed about it and didn't really take it seriously. And then decided to take me bowling, but asked me to bring a friend. So then it just became me and my friend hanging out. And it just like, he missed the point. I wanted alone time, and I just didn't get it.
So when you're dating or attracted to guys that are emotionally unavailable, the safety is that you can stay in this role where you give, and you never really have to put yourself out there and be vulnerable.
Yes.
What do you think would happen if you were vulnerable, if you kind of stood in the fact that I am enough?
I wish I could stand there. I think that'd be incredibly empowering, but I think I'm afraid of being rejected or being, judged or criticized, and getting hurt.
What does it say to you, or how do you interpret rejection?
I think I just interpret it as really personal, and that, again, it's just validating that I'm not enough in some degree.
And so what's at stake for you? Like, what do you feel would happen if you weren't a match for somebody and that you put your heart out there and they said no, or you set a boundary, and said, I'm not going to do that. That's not okay with me.
I think that'd be incredibly empowering if I was able to do that.
But if you did it, like, and you got you got rejected, or they said, no, I can't do that. Like, what are you afraid of? I know you said rejection, but what does that mean to you?
I mean, I think I'd feel like I failed in some way.
Why? Why is that failure to you?
I think because I've been successful in my career, I would interpret that as me not doing enough to get them to agree to that boundary, or they must not love me enough if they didn't agree to that boundary. And I got rejected.
So one of the limiting beliefs that you have is, what I do is how I get love.
Yes.
Okay. So, because that's how you've received approval from your dad and your career, all of those sorts of things, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And have you really felt those moments? Like, have you allowed yourself to even be in that kind of experience as an adult dating?
Completely vulnerable?
Mm-hmm.
No, I have not.
So basically, your fear is an imagined fear.
Yes, it is.
What do you think about that?
I think it's sad in one respect, but because it just seems like I'm holding myself back. But at the same time, I think it's also incredibly empowering, because that means that I can change that.
Well, yeah. So everyone has like a story that they make up, right? And it's
Yes.
literally, and one of the things that's interesting about our brain is that we get like a chemical hit when we make up a story, even if it's not accurate.
Yes.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So every time your little, I call them vulnerability traps or gaps, where we feel like we're in this situation and we start to feel vulnerable or scared, or in your case, probably out of control.
Yes.
Right. And so we have to kind of right the ship, and we make up a story that we're not safe, that we're not enough, and we legitimize. It's like we're collecting evidence that we're right.
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, so if you're keeping track of sort of like limiting beliefs that I have that I need to move through, another one is that I'm right.
Okay.
Right, because
yeah,
right, there's a strong attachment to being right. When we have a strong attachment to being right, we literally collect evidence all day long that we're right about our limiting beliefs. So if our limiting beliefs are I'm not enough, I'm not safe, we put ourselves in these situations. So when you are dating, unconsciously, you're attracting men maybe who are not emotionally available, right? And there's something in you that knows that, right? So you continue to bring them into your life. And when there's a guy who is emotionally available, can you guess kind of what happens at an unconscious level?
That I probably run away.
Yeah, run away, not attracted to.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah.
I have a client, she's really super successful, and she's been working with me, and she met this guy online, and he's super nice, and he's super appropriate, and he like calls instead of texts, and he's into her, right? And they went on 2 dates, and she said, I'm not going to go out with Dan again because he's just not affectionate, and I don't even know if there's even chemistry. And I said, well, if you're not attracted to him, do you think that you were putting out a vibe of don't touch me? She was like, oh my God, totally. I said, so is it really that he's not affectionate or that you're not attracted to him? And finally she was like, he's really nice and it freaks me out. Right? She's literally not used to receiving.
Yeah.
Okay. So does that resonate to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So one of the things that I want you to start looking at is when you get that feeling of like out of control or I'm not safe, where do you feel it in your body?
In my chest.
Okay. And what does it feel like?
It feels like ice almost.
Okay. And so when that happens, do you typically kind of like shut down and get quiet? Do you kind of push away, blame, defensive? Do you just sort of like disappear, freeze? Just what's your kind of reaction when you feel that?
I freeze a bit, and then I also push away and get defensive.
Okay. And what does that look like in your real life? What is getting defensive? What are the things you might say or do?
Like I might I dismiss it, so like if they are showing love or whatnot, I will just, and I understand that they're emotionally available, I'll just be like, oh, well, I'll find something wrong with them. I'll become very critical.
Okay. And by the way, are you really critical to yourself?
Yes, extremely.
Okay. So I want you to start noticing that when you are critical of someone else, it's an old little saying, maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. When you point the finger, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Right? So here's what I want you to start to recognize the gap. So you're dating someone and they're being nice to you or they're into you, and you start to feel that feeling in your chest. The first thing I want you to understand is that you are having a reaction to a childhood experience. This isn't adult Sam.
Okay.
Okay. So if you start from there, what do you think could be different for you?
I think placating the child and just, really standing in my adulthood might help.
Absolutely. So one of the things that you can do is what I call a self-compassion exercise. Okay. And let's say you're like on the date or you're in public. And this is based on some work by this amazing PhD named Kristen Neff. And she studied a lot of things around self-compassion and self-worth. And self-worth is very different from self-esteem, right? Self-esteem is conditional, right? Like you get a good grade, yeah, right? It's very conditional. So you've got self-esteem. We're really building self-worth. So in those moments, what you need to do is self-soothe, right? Because in that moment, your dad scoffed at you, right? When you needed soothing. So that's what you learn to do. You do it to yourself. So the first thing you do is you feel that ice. You're like, oh God, I feel scared. I feel I'm going to get rejected. Dad is going to scoff at me. Okay. So one thing you can do is you can hold your own hand and you can just move your thumb back and forth like you might do on a child if you were holding their hand. And if you can really even say to yourself, using your name, right? The research shows that when you do positive self-talk, it's more effective when you use your own name, right? So you'd say like, Sam, I know you're really scared right now. I acknowledge your pain and your suffering from when you're a child. You're safe. So one of the questions you can ask yourself is it okay to feel safe if I am safe?
Okay.
Okay, so you locate yourself in the present. When you have a somatic experience, right? So that when you do that compassion tool by stroking your own hand, you can also put your hand on your belly, you can brush your cheek. Those are all things that are self-nurturing. It activates another part of your brain that takes you out of the monkey mind, out of that fear, that vicious cycle of fear. I'm not safe, I'm not safe. So being present. And then the next thing is that you're locating your emotional adult.
Okay.
Okay. So what could you do if you were able to kind of bring yourself back to the present? What do you think that you could do that would be a little bit different when you're in that moment where you might normally push someone away or be critical?
I would instead be open.
And what would that look like? What would the behaviors be of being an open person?
Truly listening to what they have to say, being present.
Being curious?
Yes, being curious and also being receptive.
Okay.
Allowing it to come in and yeah.
Okay. So when that happens, and again, I'm a really big believer in somatics and in body, right? So let's say you do that self-soothing and then you're present and then all of a sudden he's talking and he's interested and you can tell that he's interested in you. One of the things to do is to actually physically embody your authentic self, your high self, your adult self. So what might you do? If even right now, what would you do? How would you get into physical position of being your highest adult self?
I would stand up straighter, I think, and just have better posture. I would try to be calm and present.
Okay, so one of your homework activities would be to practice embodying your highest self. So for some people, most people actually say that they sit up straighter. A lot of people might relax their shoulders, take a deep breath. Right, you can even kind of open up your arms, right? If you're noticing on those dates your body position is closed, right? So you might like actually even like open your palms, even though they can't see that, or just have an open body position.
Okay.
Okay. Now the other thing is, and I'm just going to give you like the Surgeon General warning, you might actually feel a physical feeling of like pain.
Okay.
In that same spot in your heart. And so I have a lot of clients that practice this on the phone first, like they're talking to someone on the phone and they're being really nice and they're like, like, oh God, his voice sounds kind of weird, or, he probably doesn't look like his picture online, or this sounds too good to be true. All those thoughts are those protective thoughts. Okay, so self-compassion, embody highest self. Take a deep breath. And if you feel that like, oh God, I feel like I'm standing in the middle of an open field ready to accept gunfire. One of the things that you can do and say to yourself silently is just go, pain, 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 right? It's just like, this feels weird, pain, pain. It's like when you're getting a shot. My dad used to say when I was little, I'd go, shot, 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 right? Like you just get through it, right? So you're acknowledging that. When you're in that moment of, pain, 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 what happens is you will find that you will just get through it to the other side.
Okay.
So when I tell you these things, what thoughts come up? How do you feel about this?
I mean, it sounds great. I think it just, for me, I'm just slightly skeptical just because I feel like it's so, the child is so ingrained. But it's definitely something that I can work on. Okay.
So tell me about being skeptical.
I just, I know like making small changes, like standing up taller and taking a deep breath and being open will hopefully, placate the child. I feel like sometimes those thoughts are stronger than the adult thoughts, I guess.
Well, here's the thing. They can be, right? Because I want you to think just about it, the way your brain works.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is brain chemistry, brain science. This isn't, this is data, research, right? The way your brain works. So when you are in those self-perpetuating thoughts, it's a part of your brain that you're right. It is totally stronger, and the way the way your brain is wired, if you activate the amygdala, if you activate another part of your brain through breath, through somatics, it stops. It's like pressing the brakes on your car.
Okay.
There's no way it can't work.
Okay.
Okay. So what I want to point out to you is, remember when we talked about that limiting belief of the need to be right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's your skepticism.
Okay.
Okay. Your system, and this is true for everybody, will do everything it can to stay in the status quo.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. So what do you think that you get from holding on to, this doesn't apply to me, this won't work for me? What's the unconscious gain?
That I just stay safe and that everything stays the same and I don't actually put myself out there and receive the love that I deserve.
And do you want that?
No, of course not. Right. I want the exact opposite.
You want the opposite, right. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how willing are you to allow yourself to take a risk?
10.
Okay. So then what is it going to take for you to let go of that skepticism?
I guess just doing it, standing taller, being more open, being present, placating the child. And then just as I feel better about it, just keep doing it. And I think it'll eventually dismantle the skepticism.
Well, absolutely. What I want, and if you take nothing away, right, from today, like you're like, oh, I'm never doing that. When you start to have those thoughts like this doesn't work, the thoughts are stronger than da, 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 I want you to really notice what you're noticing.
Okay.
Okay. That is literally like the little gremlin grabbing at your ankle, Sam, and saying, no, we're going to stay in the family system. We're going to follow the rules to keep dad happy and mom happy.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I want you to hear me because you're very smart, right? So I know that you get it. But there is, if you do not resolve the childhood needs, you will never get the adult want.
That's very powerful. Yeah.
So childhood needs will always supersede adult wants until you start to parent your emotional child by being an adult.
Yeah.
Okay. So what just happened is, in a like if we were to dramatize it, is your little girl was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yes.
Okay. So I want you to actually now get into the physical position of being your emotional adult self. Just practice what we talked about. So put your body in that position.
Okay.
Take a deep breath.
Okay.
Okay. So what would you tell that little girl? What would your adult self tell that little girl?
I would tell her that I understand the pain, but it's just pain and we'll get through it. And I have compassion for her. But at the same time, I'm an adult now and I want to very much be in a deeply connected relationship. And that involves taking risks and being in my adult.
And can you tell her that you're going to keep her safe?
Yes, absolutely.
So tell her that. I'm going to keep you safe.
I'm going to keep you safe.
Okay, so open your eyes. And how does that, it might feel weird, but how does it feel to just be in the process of trying that?
It feels really good, honestly.
Good. So what opened up for you as a result of doing that?
It opened up to me possibilities. The possibility of moving forward and breaking old habits.
Because really that's your emotional adult worldview. Because I'm sure you do that in your job every single day, right? I mean, you work for human rights, so you have to be in possibility, right?
Yes.
Every day.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's what I really want you to do is, we're looking at how can you let your guard down? How can you be vulnerable? Is that you have to assure that emotional child that you're going to keep her safe.
Yes.
She might be disappointed, right? You might get sad. A guy might not be a match.
Right.
But Sam, are you going to die from that?
No, that just means that there's somebody else out there who is a match. Yeah.
Right. So when I work with people, I sort of make them take the oath of, I hereby agree to feel all my feelings, including but not limited to sad, mad, disappointed. So when you sort of have that agreement, when you're ready to have that agreement with your emotional child, right, with that little girl who got scoffed at, you have to reassure her that it might be pain, right? It might hurt.
Yeah.
But you can keep her safe because you are a girl who can right the ship.
Okay.
So what's your takeaway from our conversation today overall?
My takeaway is really that I'm not going to let the child in me obstruct my ability to be in a deeply committed relationship and to get what I want as well.
I love that. And that sometimes you have to be the emotional adult and speak to right? Have dialogue with that part of you that was
Yes.
really, got the raw end of the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't want to be stuck in that.
Right. So willingness, courage, and taking responsibility. And I want your little flag is when you feel like skeptical, you're going to be like, oh, that's just the system, right? The need to be right, collecting evidence.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, I totally believe in your ability to do this and leveraging sort of that that part of you that works to protect other people, right? I mean, it's kind of amazing. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And so to sort of parlay that into being the advocate for your own life,
Yes,
is totally within your capability. And if you're able to do that, and be that self-aware and go through the pain, right? You are going to you have that moment, you're like, oh my God, I didn't die. I got through it. I was able to receive if only for a moment. And that's how you actually, one sort of moment at a time, totally create a shift.
great. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here and being on the Dating Den. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to hear what happens next for you, Sam.
Great. Thank you so much, Marni. I really, really appreciate it.